Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Firm Returns Weekly. This week, we're going to go over some news and other items of interest for tinyBuild, Warner Brothers Discovery, and Taylor Maritime Investments. So I will just share my screen quickly. Yeah, good. Yeah, so the first thing I wanted to mention is that Streets of Rogue 2 has continued to gain momentum, with the game breaking into the top 100 most wishlisted upcoming games on Steam this week. And I can show you it's actually up to 97th place now, which is so 99 yesterday when I released this weekly update, and so Saturday, and on Sunday it's already climbed another couple of places. Now that could be because of games that are up coming out, but it's still great to see. And using the internal wishlist data that we've been given for recent releases, for example, I Am Future, which I'm going to mention in a minute, and previously Punch Club 2, had a couple of articles giving some inside information there, which is great. But yeah, using this internal wishlist data, we can make a guess as to the current wishlist numbers for Streets of Rogue 2. So I Am Future, as we're going to find out in a minute, had 160,000 wish lists at launch and was the 135th most wishlisted game on Steam at the time. I recorded the wishlist rank right before the day before release in an earlier episode of Firm Returns Weekly. So that's how I know its positioning. And Punch Club 2 had 100,000 wish lists at launch and was around about 220th in the wishlist rankings. Not exactly sure what the figure was because I can't. I don't think I have a record of it the day before, but I feel like it was definitely over 200. And I seem to recall it being somewhere around the 220 mark. So significantly further back than Punch Club, and you can sort of see that matches up with having 100k wish list versus 160k. But following release, the wish list for both games have grown to exceed 200k. So with these figures in mind, we could probably make a reasonable estimate. The Streets of Rogue 2 currently has greater than 200,000 wish lists on Steam, and we're still a long way from launch. So I said as well that we could be looking at a similar level of success to Potioncraft, which sold 700,000 copies during early access and greater than 1 million post version 1.0 launch. So yeah, I mean, when Potioncraft was launched in early access, that would have been fairly comparable because Streets of Rogue 2 is going to be coming out in early access for a period there, and the 700,000 copies sold would be a pretty amazing number to get for Streets of Rogue 2. But yeah, that's kind of like the level it's starting to shape up. I don't know what the wishlist ranking of Potioncraft was before its launch. I wasn't really following the wishlist rankings at that point. So of the new upcoming releases at that point. So I can't tell you on that one, but follower numbers are sort of looking fairly comparable. And I can just imagine that Potioncraft must have been in the top 100 before its launch as well. I think there was quite a lot of hype around that game, so that's why I'm sort of saying we could be looking at similar numbers to that. Yeah, as opposed to just speculation, let's move on to some real data we have from Alex Nishiporshik, the CEO of tinyBuild, who's given us another article, this time talking about giving us some publishing data, some stats, and some just sort of general information on how they marketed and went about releasing I Am Future in early access, and managed to release it with a pretty incredible 160,000 wish lists for an early access launch. So, and just to remember, it was just as a reminder, it was launched on the 8th of August. So yeah, just a couple of little points I've taken from the article, but I've got a link here for you to have a look at. I do recommend giving that a read, as I do with the Punch Club 2 article, which was similarly insightful. So we now know that the game has 160,000 wish lists at launch and has thus far generated greater than $500,000 in sales, which translates to approximately 30,000 or over 30,000 copies sold. And we know, as I mentioned before, the wish list has subsequently grown to approximately 200,000, and it actually gave us a pretty good chart showing that, which I can show you in a second. Positioning the game to perform well during sales, it's discounted, and at the version 1.0 launch. So yeah, a lot of people, when they put the games into the wish list, they're just waiting for a sale to snap it up. So that's kind of like the catalyst for converting the wish list to actual sales. And I did actually find an interesting article, which I haven't read yet, but I had a quick glance through, talking about conversion rates for different games against the wish list numbers. And I think it was something like the average was 19 or 20%, just from a quick glance. Like I say, I haven't fully read it, so I could, but if it's an interesting article and if it's informative, I might include it in next week's weekly update. But yeah, it's 19 to 20%. So you're looking at, it could be for a 200,000 wish list, that would be sort of like 40K conversions, and that's just from the wish list. But there's also, of course, people that don't wish list the game that come along as well and buy it, which is why we're looking at 30,000 copies sold with the initial 160, and that figure is annually as well. So the number of people who have wishlisted the game who buy it across a year, it's sort of 19 to 20% on average, but it does vary quite a bit by game. But yeah, I'll probably put a link to that article in the next one if I read it and it's interesting. Yeah, but just generally, these articles, this one on I Am Future and the Punch Club 2 article, have been really giving us an insight into tinyBuild's well-oiled publishing machine, and it really is a tremendous asset for the company, and really gives a good hope that they'll be able to fully future releases some of the big high potential games in the pipeline. Will be able to really achieve their full potential with us, which is one of the crucial components. Really, is a strong launch to really get that initial momentum going. So I think they've proven this year with and in prior years with other releases that they've done, but certainly these ones that we've really got to have an inside view for, I Am Future and Punch Club 2, that they really do have the capability to do a very strong launch for games. So I think we can expect good things from Streets of Rage 2, which is already generating a lot of traction. Even could be sort of 6 months away from its launch. We don't know exactly when it's going to be launched. Certainly next year, sometime in early access. So yeah, we're already getting a lot of traction from it. Just see if I can get this. That was a mistake. Yeah, let's have a quick look here. So yeah, this was the interesting lifetime wishlist actions for Iron Future, which is included in the article. So you give a few labels here. So like when they did the PC gaming show reveal, that's what really the game had. I don't know whether it had a store page or not, but it had no marketing for that. But then it gets they had a pre-show, a PC gaming show, which was viewed by quite a lot of people, and similarly Guerrilla Collective as well. And both these pushed it up right up into close to 50K. And then they had the demo, which was released several weeks before a couple of weeks before the Steam Next Fest, to give it, as Alex outlines in the article, to give it a chance to get a bit of traction and get a good sort of player count, good engagement, which helps it to perform well, helps the Steam's algorithms and so on to promote it more during the Steam Next Fest, which then pushed it further. And it talks about there being a game delay. They had previously planned to release it a bit earlier, but pushed it back a bit, and people were still fairly receptive, and it kept on climbing the wish list, I guess. And then we get the launch. I think this purple line is the actual real wish list. I'm not sure exactly what all of them are there. We haven't got keys, but judging by the figures Alex gave us, he said as we got launched, we suddenly rocket up wish list. So it must have been around about the 160,000 something, and then at launch it was then just around about the 200K mark. But anyway, let's go back to my article. So moving on to Warner Bros. Discovery, I'm mainly going to talk about Mortal Kombat 1, which is set to release on the 19th of September, and which is just a couple of weeks away. And it's I just thought I'd give some updates associated with this. I mean, it's looking like it's going to be a pretty big release, and it's retailing at a pretty high price of basically $70. So the same sort of level as the Tears of the Kingdom and so on from Nintendo. Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, which I think is the highest retailing game now. So now it's set the benchmark for the par for all of the new big AAA releases that come out. So thanks a lot, Nintendo, for that. But yeah, so let's have a look here. So we've got quite a few new trailers. They've just been doing a steady kind of schedule of new trailers coming out for the game, and there was a kind of live action trailer featuring Dave Bautista, which I think had close to 3 million views just a few days ago. And yeah, each trailer's had more than 1 million views on YouTube, just on the main sort of Mortal Kombat channel, which has 1.32 million subscribers, we can see here. And then obviously it gets reshared through Warner Brothers Discovery, various channels and so on, Warner Brothers Games and so on, different channels. So it'll be multiples of that. And then yeah, the actual official announcement trailer, which was released 3 months ago, had 8 million, or at least 8 million views. So it's certainly getting a lot of interest. And just got a few stats from Steam here, because while the game's likely to sell significantly better on consoles than PC, the Steam figures are looking pretty positive, with the game already in 50th place in the top sellers list from pre-sales alone. And it's I think I just got a bit of an updated numbers here. Let me go change this tab. Yeah, it's actually increased to 59th place in the wish lists, and it's gone back a little bit on the top sellers list to 62. But so yeah, I don't know what it might have been higher than 50 a few days ago when they launched the pre-sale of the game. But yeah, it's looking like a pretty high potential, and it's already bringing in money just from the pre-sales. and those pre-sales will help it to have pretty good player counts. I think this is something Alex talked about in another one of the other articles. Having the pre-sales of the game allows you to have pretty high concurrent player counts, like straight away at launch, as people immediately, as soon as the game's activated, they're able to play it. And they can get it pre-downloaded and ready, and it helps to give the game a bit of that early momentum straight away, just out of the gates. So yeah, I think it's good to see decent numbers of pre-sales going here. So yeah, anyway, we could be looking at a second big hit release. Could be another $1 billion one, maybe. Might even be getting a similar sort of level to Hogwarts Legacy. Anyway, so yeah, it's looking pretty good from the Warner Brothers games segment. 2 pretty good releases, and then we've got hopefully, but it's been delayed a couple of times, we've got the Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League game, supposed to be coming out in February next year. So we'll have to see how that comes on schedule. It has been pushed back a couple of times. It's being made by the same developers that made the Arkham games, Arkham Asylum, City, and Night, which did very well, critically acclaimed. I'm pretty sure sold in aggregate well over $1 billion. So same studios that made those. So we'll have to see. But I think the reason it's been delayed is because there was some controversy during the pandemic with remote working and things not and layoffs and things like that, things not, which, yeah, so there might have been some significant disruption, but to that particular studio, which is unfortunate. But hopefully we'll still get a strong release, but we'll have to wait and see for that one. But anyway, Mortal Kombat 1 is looking good, and the publishing approach, the marketing has been strong so far and generating lots of traction for the game. So it's been good to see. So move on now quickly to the last thing I wanted to cover, which was Taylor Maritime Investments. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about what we're seeing from charter rates at the moment. So the Baltic Handysize Index, which is the most relevant index for charter rate index for Taylor Maritime Investments, because most of their fleet is Handysize. So it's the Baltic Handysize Index seems to be inflecting up from its lows reached last month. They go all the way down just below 400, and it's now come back up to 534 at the time I captured this. So quite a nice climb. But yeah, this is going to be important because and this is actually what the company's management was predicting in their last quarterly update, that they were expecting charter rates to climb in the next few months, which is what they're doing. And yeah, this is going to be important because they've still got that somewhat elevated debt levels from the Grindrod acquisition, which they're trying to pay down. And because of the rates that they had at the end of the most recent quarter, which were $10,600 per day on average. So that's the net time charter rate for each vessel in the fleet. This equated to an unlevered gross cash yield of just 7.9%, which is significantly lower than what they had in the last couple of years, and they had rates above sort of 20, comfortably above 20% for much of that time. And if you look back a bit further on the Baltic Handysize Index curve, you can see that there's a pretty massive peak just to the left of it. So yeah, we're well below the kind of heights it got up to. I think it was up to around about 2000 or something compared to the 534 now. So we're well below those high levels. But TMI's had a much more of they've smoothed out the curve a bit because they've been chartering in a sort of a mix of different charter durations. So anything, some stuff spot rates, but it's mostly sort of medium and long term, so sort of anything between 3 months to 12 months kind of range, which allows them to sort of smooth out that they didn't quite capture all of the upside when it really peaked, but they smoothed out the decrease, because I believe it's actually been around about $6,000 to $7,000 per day. It's the actual average for the what the index sort of converts to. When it was down at 400, but it's they've been able to maintain it above 10,000 because of their having the slightly longer durations, and having locked those in when the prices were higher. So yeah, it's that they're also, but yeah, as I was saying, the 7.9% yield they were getting before wouldn't have been enough to cover to pay the dividend and interest and pay down the debt and all the uses of cash they have. So they have been quite profitably selling vessels, which so basically they're selling some of the larger vessels they had in that came with the grind pod fleet, some sort of Supramax ones, and also some, I think they had some larger ones as well, to try and get it down so it's just a fairly uniform fleet, so easier to manage and what have you. And that's where they see the structural advantages, because of the order books with the handy-sized vessels. The age of the fleet, of the global fleet, is substantial, and I think they have about the lifetime expectancy of a vessel is something like 25 years, and I believe I can't remember the exact figures, but the average age is over 15 or something now. So there's a lot of vessels are getting retired, and the order books are for the next few years nowhere near replacement rate for the number of vessels that are getting retired. So, and a lot of this is to do with a few different factors. There's the uncertainty from new environmental regulations coming into force. So new vessels, people are worried about the same kind of thing with mines and so on, that you're seeing. People are worried about investing in new vessels because they're thinking, oh, what if I make this investment in a vessel an asset that's got to last 25 years, and then they change the regulations and they say now this is not fuel efficient enough, or it's not environmentally friendly enough in whatever way, releases too much CO2, and so then it just becomes a stranded asset. So same reason why they're not a lot of companies are not wanting to invest in opening new oil fields, for instance, or new mines and things like that. So yeah, those kind of things are playing in there. And there are also other aspects are like in order to reduce CO2 emissions, they're expecting new regulations to come in that will force ships to sail at lower speeds, which will increase the time it takes, effectively reduce the capacity, because there's more vessels. The vessels are taking longer to get to their destinations, and so there's fewer available at any one time. So all these kind of structural aspects are particularly favorable for the handy size segment of the market, and so they're selling off some of the larger vessels and using that to pay off the debt, so they can just concentrate it on the handysize ones. And obviously, and they've been able to do so at rates significantly higher than the effective rates they bought them for. So it's been a positive. It hasn't been destructive at all of shareholder value so far. And yeah, and now with the rates looking like they're inflecting back up, we should hopefully expect a bit more contribution from the actual vessels themselves. But yeah, I just wanted to say as well that in hindsight, now is probably a more opportune moment to buy the stock than when I first purchased it, sort of shortly after its IPO in 2021. Even though the IPO price I thought was pretty reasonable, I think it IPO'd with a 7% dividend yield with their target dividend rate. So it IPO'd at $1 a share, and they were immediately guiding to pay 7 cents a share dividends, 7% yield. That's now been raised to 8 cents, and the shares have fallen to something like 87 cents a share. So it's now a 9.2% yield, and you've had significant NAV growth to boot. So the NAV now is $1.56 a share. So it's trading at a significant discount to its NAV, and it's yielding 9.2%. So it's pretty attractive. It's only more attractive even than it was at the time of the IPO. And yeah, and I've just got a graph here illustrating that. But as I say, hindsight is 2020. So yeah, lessons learned. But I still thought it was attractively priced even back then. And obviously, initially it did do quite well with the boom in rates shortly after it IPO'd, due to the pandemic reopening. And yeah, which took the price, but the trouble was it was, even when it got up to its highs, it was still trading at I think the NAV got all the way up to $1.70 or something, so it's still trading at quite a discount to its NAV. And I wasn't really I wasn't really interested in selling it, but yeah, in hindsight, you could have sold it off then and then picked it up again when it crashed. It's kind of inevitable that with these cyclical things that it would have. In hindsight, that was a bit of a cyclical peak in rates. Probably would have been a good time to offload some shares and then pick them back up when they drop back down again. But as I say, it's a learning curve. I will know for future such businesses. But yeah, I'm perfectly happy holding it at the current price, and if there weren't other things that I would prefer to be buying that I thought were cheaper, like tinyBuild, for instance, or Warner Brothers Discovery, I probably would be buying more at the current price, because as I said, it does seem like we're down at the cyclical low. And if you look back over history, this is pretty close to kind of the lowest level that charter rates have got in the past as well. So they've got slightly lower during certain recessions and so on. But yeah, it gets down to a level where it's just not sustainable to charter vessels, and so that just naturally pulls out supply from the market, and it naturally forces up prices, and that's how supply and demand works. So yeah, we're getting a natural inflection back up, and then, but the share price certainly isn't inflecting up at the moment. So it's could be a good an opportune buying opportunity right now. But anyway, I think that is it for me in this episode. So I will see you all next week, and I'll let you know if any of those articles are any good, and maybe include that I mentioned, and maybe include them in the next week's write-up. But anyway, until then, well, see you next time.